Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Battle Cry with me, Shiv Arur, the only show on television that gets you up close with India's warriors, India's weapons, and how our country fights. Now, in an earlier episode, we told you about the missile fury in the backdrop of what's happening in Ladakh. A fast, rapid number of missile tests that have been taking place in this country. Well, you'd be happy to know that those tests are continuing non-stop. Lots of missile tests, lots of missile muscle flexing as well. And that's why we're dedicating another episode of Battle Cry to India's missile fury.
India's missile ka mausam continues. After a month of missile test fury, there's no time for rest. The flurry of missile tests continues. From the tank killer Nag to the sharpened ship killer BrahMos. From the air-launched Hellfire Sant to a new foreign anti-ship missile. India's Missile Fury Part 2. The Big Bang focus on Battle Cry.
And kicking off Missile Fury 2.0 was a spectacular test of the Nag anti-tank missile. Now remember, when India began developing missiles many decades ago, they were very successful. But the Nag never quite met all requirements until now. And this anti-tank, tank-killing missile is ready for service. Take a look at these spectacular pictures from its final test.
An incredible piece of footage from the hallowed turf of Pokhran. What you're looking at is the Nag, India's very own anti-tank guided missile, blasting out from its carrier, soaring high into the sky and screaming down to destroy a target tank. Nag, anti-tank guided missile, 4.7 kilometer range, target tanks, armored vehicles. Status ready for induction. The Nag has taken a long time to prove itself. But with this test, the missile has completed its final trial with the Indian Army and is now declared fit for induction and operational service. The final trial by fire you see here was no ordinary one. While it was fired here at a small range, the missile can destroy targets out to 7 kilometers. The missile was integrated with the actual warhead and a tank target was kept at designated range. Fired at sunrise, the missile accurately locked and destroyed the target tank. The Nag missile has fire and forget and top attack capabilities to defeat all modern battle tanks equipped with composite and reactive armor. With this final user trial, Nag will enter into production phase. The missile will be produced by Defence PSU Bharat Dynamics Limited, whereas Ordnance Factory Medak will produce the Nag missile carrier you see firing the weapon. The Nag's carrier, the BMP-2, is already deployed in large numbers in Ladakh and at high altitudes, which means the Nag will, in the coming months, see possible deployment in area where India and China have deployed large numbers of armored vehicles during the current standoff. Nag carriers deployed in strength could be formidable tank killers in such a scenario. The final trials will hopefully bring to a close the long, difficult development and testing journey of one of India's most awaited missiles. Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me live on Battle Cry, our resident weapons expert, Sandeep Punithan, executive editor, India Today magazine, with me live. Sandeep, You know, the Nag missile that's just been tested, the statement says this paves the way for its induction into operational service. This is a missile that has been much needed, and it has taken a long time to get to this place now.
Absolutely, Shiv. The Nag, as you know, was one of the missiles of the IGMDP program launched in the early 80s. And it's literally the last missile from the IGMDP project to have finally reached a successful stage of being inducted into the services. And this is something that should have come years ago. But, you know, it's been tweaked over the years with improvements suggested by the services. And now we're confident that we finally have one of the deadliest anti-tank missiles in the world in service.
So we've just shown you the Nag, the ground-based tank killer that's ready for service, but there's also an airborne extended range version called the SANT, or Standoff Anti-Tank Weapon, that's also being tested by the Indian Armed Forces. In fact, in just a few weeks from now, it's going to be fired from an Indian Air Force Mi-35 helicopter. Take a look at the tests that have been taking place on this new weapon.
In the world of precision strike, in the world's most dangerous places, there are few missiles more feared than this one. The American AGM-114 Hellfire. Fired from drones or helicopters, these missiles arrive at their targets up to 11 kilometers away with deadly laser-guided accuracy. The Hellfire is a weapon on the Indian Air Force's Apache helicopters. And now, India has begun to test its own version of the Hellfire, called SANT, short for Standoff Anti-Tank Missile. The SANT is an air-to-surface missile that was recently tested, and in the weeks ahead will be tested again from an Indian Air Force Mi-35 attack helicopter. The SANT is an extended range version of the Dhruvastra, a short-range anti-tank missile also under test. Both missiles will be optional weaponry on India's Rudra and light combat helicopters. The missile could also be a fit on the country's in-developed drone platforms for the future. The SANT, which can use infrared homing or active radar homing to find targets, will be a formidable standoff weapon against tanks and armored vehicles. Over the next few months, the missile will be refined and customized to create a no-nonsense tank killer that can be fired from long distances away. India's own Hellfire will soon be in the skies near India's borders.
So apart from the missile tests of upcoming weapon systems, there's also been a lot of muscle flexing of existing missile systems in the inventory of the armed forces. Most notably, anti-ship missile tests on both the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea by the Indian Navy. Spectacular pictures. Take a look.
Sunk and sent to the bottom of the sea. The missile you just saw blasting off from Indian Navy missile boat INS Prabal was a Russian Kh-35 Uran. The ship it sank was the retired Indian Navy warship INS Ganga. The show of force in one of the most churning pieces of ocean in the world, the Arabian Sea. The muscle flexing from India, loud and clear. both to Pakistan and China. Both countries looking to make inroads into the Indian Ocean. A few days earlier, there was even greater show of force. A BrahMos supersonic cruise missile blasting off from indigenously built destroyer INS Chennai while on patrol in the Arabian Sea. Once again, the missile smashed into a ship target and sank it. The twin tests may be part of the Indian Navy's Western Fleet exercises, but they come at a time when China has been trying hard to empower Pakistan in the Arabian Sea, while conducting its own snooping missions in the Indian Ocean. The tests also affirm India's primacy in an area saddled with shipping lanes of vital importance to both China and Pakistan. With China supplying Pakistan soon with submarines and naval hardware of all kinds. India's two neighbors remain fixed in the Indian Navy's crosshairs. A world in deep flux during the pandemic, the churn in Ladakh and violence at the line of control mean things could turn at sea at any time. And fleet exercises like these only remind the country that while the army holds off the Chinese on land and the Indian Air Force buzzes the airspace, the Indian Navy is on war alert at sea.
And Sandeep, apart from the missile tests that we're seeing take place, we also saw, those mesmerizing images of the anti-ship missile tests, the Urans being fired from, missile corvettes, both in the Bay of Bengal as well as the Arabian Sea. Take us through the importance of that. I mean, these are missiles that are already in service and they're being demonstrated, and it's a sort of muscle flexing that's happening out at sea.
Absolutely, Shiv. In fact, the KH-35 Uran missiles came in from Russia in the mid-90s, and they equip three principal classes of naval warships. The Delhi class, which are, of course, replacing it with BrahMos missiles, and you have the Kora class and the Pralay and Prabal class of missile corvettes. Now, this is a missile that has had troubled service record. It's not been the best of anti-ship missiles in the naval inventory. It's had various issues over the last couple of years. But with these two test firings a few days apart, the Navy has demonstrated that it's finally, put its troubles with this missile behind them. And now we have finally one of the deadliest anti-ship missiles in the naval inventory, a very large number of missiles that are there, that are finally ready to take on any challenge if the need arises. Shiv.
Very, very strong message going out from both the Bay of Bengal as well as the Arabian Sea. Sandeep, thank you very much for joining us and making sense of those missile tests for us. So while you've got many missiles under test and many missiles being flexed in these fleet exercises, there are some missiles that are going to be joining Indian service very, very soon, including both Indian missiles and some foreign missiles like the naval strike missile that we will be receiving with the Indian Navy on incoming anti-submarine warfare helicopters. Take a look at what's coming in soon.
We have shown you what India's missile season has looked like. A rapid flurry of missile tests and immense muscle flexing. Now let's tell you about missiles that will be joining Indian service very soon. The first is a missile that will be the standard anti-ship missile on the soon-to-arrive MH-60 Romeo helicopters for the Indian Navy. The Norwegian naval strike missile will be the weapon on board. So far, seen being fired from ship-based and land-based test launchers, the naval strike missile has been developed for helicopter and aircraft carriage. With India set to be one of the first customers for this capability. Meanwhile, in India, scientists are also developing an indigenous heliborne anti-ship missile, designated the Naval Anti-Ship Missile or NASM. The missile is currently on the drawing board, but could enter its crucial test phase in 2 years. Another important weapon that the armed forces are waiting on is the indigenous Quick Reaction Surface-to-Air Missile or QRSAM. The missile, intended as a lightning-quick air defense weapon, has already been test-fired a few times and will likely be ready for service in a year or two. But there's an indigenous weapon that has finished its development and testing, has been ordered by the Indian Air Force and Navy, and is fully set for entry into operational service. The Beyond Visual Range air-to-air missile has been accepted with great joy by the Indian Air Force. And the missile, coupled with the brand new Meteor long-range air combat missiles on the new Rafale jets, will prove to be game changers in protecting Indian airspace. India's pride, its guided missile program, has borne several dependable weapon fruits, and it won't be ending anytime soon.
And as we always say here on Battle Cry, India's true strength will only be realized when no human needs to be sent into battle and not a single weapon fired. Thanks for watching. See you next week. India Today TV, along